As we get started, I would ask that you place your cell phones on silent or turn them off. Today we have 14 items on our agenda. Item 14 is a report. And items 1 through 13, I have been asked to pull items 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 12 and 13 for individual discussion. Let me say that again. 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 12 and 13 be pulled for individual discussion. Is there anybody who would like any additional items pulled? Anything that that you're here for that you'd like to discuss individually besides those? Okay. Council, is there a motion? Alderman Olson.
I would move approval on the remaining items.
Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Sitma. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Olson?
Yes.
Quadrigula?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes. So that brings us to item number 5, which is the 2018 Storm Sewer Rehab Award of Bid. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Wolski,
Second.
seconded by Olson. Alderman Wolski.
President Janser, thank you. Kind of a comment here to introduce an idea that may be worth thinking about. Obviously, I feel like our bid amount came in well under our budget amount, which is obviously good news that I think we're all very happy about. But this is a storm sewer construction project to deal with ongoing maintenance, I assume stretches of area that need attention. If I make a mistake in any of my comment or assumptions here, would somebody please correct me? But we also have a storm sewer development fund that is tasked specifically with new construction of storm sewer projects in areas where it may have been overlooked at one point in the past. As we get into tougher financial decisions, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate to at least indulge the conversation of funding our redevelopment out of our storm sewer development. So our reconditioning projects along with our new projects in terms of balancing dollars and resources, maybe it's appropriate to consider those things at the same time on the same list rather than dealing with them independently. And funding them out of the same bucket might encourage that consideration. So I simply offer that as perhaps something worth talking about. I'm going to support this motion today because this is work that needs to be done and I support it. But.
Okay, any further comment? Okay, seeing none, call the roll.
Wolski?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Quadrigula?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes. Motion carried. Item number 6 is the bid for the pickups and the SUVs. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Olson.
Second.
Seconded by Sipma. Discussion. Alderman Wolski.
President Janser, thank you. I requested this be pulled because there were a few things regarding the staff memo and the budget that didn't line up as well as I would like them to. My expectation is that these items are fully budgeted for, otherwise we don't have the dollars to spend on them. But as I looked through an example, the traffic budget or the traffic truck intended for the traffic department, I didn't see that in the traffic department's budget. Am I missing something somewhere?
Lance?
President Janser and Alderman Wolski, excuse me, the traffic department's truck was in our capital purchases account, which is a separate account than the actual traffic budget. So in the capital purchases, that's where we list all the capital purchase equipment for the entire city.
Okay. Would the rest of these been out of that same capital purchases line, or?
Finance director would have to answer that one for
Okay.
you.
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, that depends on which department. If it's a special revenue or enterprise fund, they typically are budgeted in those funds. So the street department or the traffic division is a general fund account, so that's why it's in with the other general fund equipment.
Okay.
Alderman Straight?
Thank you, Chairman Janser. I guess in reading this, I've always appreciated in the past, especially as it's pertained to public works, of how the memo has always been stated that we're replacing or we're updating, or it speaks to a time schedule. And I think that would help us in referring comments back to the public of this product is outdated, we're just making a standard upgrade. So maybe for future staff, comments on memos like this, it would be helpful for us in speaking to the public who are constantly reminding us about their property taxes and where we're spending dollars, because it's the vehicles that draw a lot of public attention, and that would be helpful for us moving forward. So I guess that's my comment.
Alderman Wolski?
I appreciate Alderman Straight's thoughts. They kind of lead directly to some additional thoughts that I had on this issue, which is in terms of a city as an overall institution, organization, do we have a set policy on how we manage vehicle acquisitions, how we manage at what point they are, no longer useful or no longer valuable enough to continue maintaining? I know many corporations have, very significant fleet management programs. There's even software that's being developed to facilitate or, expedite some of this type of thinking. And then ultimately, what we would hope is smart spending. And I'm curious. I haven't seen that. I don't know if it exists. I don't know what our policy on any of these things are, and I'm curious about it.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President Janser. Alderman Wolski, we do not have fleet management software. It is one of those areas that we'd like to certainly add to our tool chest. It would be great to have automation and asset management software and all the other kind of bells and whistles that help us become better at tracking those kinds of things. We would like to standardize the vehicle replacement protocol, but each vehicle has sort of different replacement needs. For example, a fire truck would be used differently than, say, a grader, which would be used differently than a police car, which is used differently than a standard vehicle that might be conducting inspections and that sort of thing. So standardizing the various uses is something that has to be further looked at in order to ensure that that any kind of standard placed on the replacement of those vehicles makes sense for the vehicle that's being replaced. So hopefully that provides a little bit of insight. Essentially at this point, we have the users of the vehicle and the department directors and their subordinate supervisors evaluate the vehicle as to whether or not that vehicle's reached the end of its useful life, and also look at other things like maintenance and maintenance costs, repair and replacement items that have been needed for that particular vehicle as well. And at some point the vehicle gets identified for whether or not it needs to be replaced.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Padregula.
Just to respond to Alderman Wolski, I don't mean to be facetious or cynical here, but I think since I've been involved with the council, usually the criterion is when we've run out of string and baling wire to keep the thing together. I somehow missed the how many years these pickups have been in service. Usually I remember reading something like, the service life is 10 years and it's falling apart after 25 years, and the staff is asking us to allocate money to replace it. That's my recollection, and I didn't catch that here. But I think that is really a good idea. If we can't have a uniform policy, maybe at least we can have something on a piece of paper that says fire trucks have, well, I understand they have a 20-year useful life, and then they go into second line service for a while. And, it'd be nice if we had something kind of thought through and written out. My personal opinion has been that, we've gone way past the usual life of these things, and it probably has incurred extra money in terms of repairing them. So it's probably something to put on our list of things to make a list of.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Please call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Padregula?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Straight?
No.
Wolski?
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes. Motion carried. Item number 7 is the industrial wheel loader. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Sitma,
Second.
seconded by Olson. Discussion. Alderman Wolski?
I have a couple questions on this. I assume probably first for Public Works and then maybe for Mr. Lakefield. But Mr. Jonason, my question on this is one that comes from very significant ignorance. What is an industrial wheel loader?
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, basically it's I guess a loader, bucket loader, like we use for our snow removal, loading sand, salt, things like that.
Okay.
And it has wheels instead of
Yeah.
tracks or something like that, huh?
Okay, thank you. Perhaps, Dan, you might be up for this too, I'm not sure, but President Janser, if I may
Please continue.
This was budgeted at $65,000 a year, I think, what I read in the memo, and the bid is at maybe $26,000 a year. Pretty significant savings, $39,000 a year. Obviously, that's good. We're happy about that. What happens to those dollars in these situations where we have a significant savings and the dollars that were budgeted or allocated don't get applied to where they were budgeted or allocated?
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, I'll take a stab at this, and if I'm incorrect, I'm sure the finance director will correct me, but this is coming from our general fund, our street department budget, so it would stay in the cash reserves for the general fund if not used.
Does it stay under the specific line? Did we approve this in the budget under a specific line? Again, I was looking for some of these things and couldn't quite coordinate where they were coming from, and so.
Mr. Janser, Alderman Wolski, and it's page 105 of the budget, capital purchases. These are general fund accounts. And what would happen is if that money is not reallocated in this budget year, it would end up in the reserves, general fund reserves. So it wouldn't necessarily be earmarked for capital purchases next year, if that is your question. I think I'm understanding. It would be available for use in the budget.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Sitma,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Quadrigula.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item number 9, a skid steer loader trade transaction. Motion?
So moved.
Moved by Sipma,
Second.
seconded by Olson. Discussion. Alderman Wolski.
President Janser, thank you. This was kind of a math check here for probably either Dan or Jason, I don't know, whoever crafted this memo, but the language here that suggests that we have, because of these trade deals, we're getting a rate of $5 to $11 per hour for use of a skid steer. Fantastic if that's the case, but that number's so low that I'm double checking it.
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, that is correct. What we do is we purchase the loader, and then we also have an option on there so that we can trade that loader in and get a new model every year based on the amount of hours that we put on that, like 0 to 250 hours. They'll give us a price of $2,500 to trade it in for a new one, $250 to $500, another number. And basically what it works out to is it costs us between $5 and $11 an hour to use that skid steer for a year. And we always have a new machine under warranty trading in. So it, if we use it for 1,000 hours, it's about $5,000 for us to trade that machine in at the end of the year, get a brand new machine with full warranty and everything on it, and always keep a new machine in inventory.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do have one follow-up, Dan. Do we pay a premium to be involved in that service, to be a part of that service, or is that Okay.
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, no, it's something that I guess we kind of dreamt up a few years ago when we were trying to come up with a means of upgrading our equipment and keeping new equipment, because a lot of the old equipment was costing us a tremendous amount of funds in repairs. So in working with the different implement dealers, we looked at leasing them, and they said, we've heard of people that have gone this way, traded in. And in talking with the different dealers, they were all real receptive to it, because when they sell to a government entity, they get a lot of discounts from the manufacturers. So they can essentially take that machine back after we use it for a year and pretty much get the new price for it again.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Chairman Janser. Dan, I guess that is always the justification that I enjoy hearing, and I enjoy reading it in the memos in advance. And I think as we go into the budget cycle, that justification moving forward for the future year and capital purchases is going to be very helpful for us. And so I appreciate you saying it now, and I'd like to read it in the memos in advance so we don't have to take up precious time here, because I know it's important, but people read these things and then they push back on us. So just to convey that to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Alderman Padregula.
Quick question. Do we have this kind of I agree, this is a wonderful idea. Do we have this just for skid steer loaders or more general equipment like graders?
Mr. President, Alderman Padregula, it's just on the skid steers now. When you get into a lot of the larger equipment, you're talking a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 piece of equipment. The suppliers aren't nearly as willing to do it with a piece of equipment like that. That's why we've gone to trying to lease the equipment, and like we do with our blades for the winter, we'll just lease them for 6 months and then turn them back.
Okay,
so
thanks.
It's basically, at this time, the only thing we're doing it is on our skid steers, but it's there's probably 7 or 8 skid steers that we're doing it on amongst our various departments right now.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dan. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Sitma,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Padregula.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item number 10 is the permit fees ordinance for outdoor dining areas.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who?
Moved.
Okay, moved by Wolski, second by Sitma. Discussion. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Chairman Janser. I guess I just wanted to make one comment. I'm extremely excited about this. Mr. Lane, I did want to just convey to you that the pushback we get from a lot of people is now all of our energies up here are going to support downtown. It's my intent with this, the permit fee and the process, that we're going to take this out into the community because there are spots on North Hill and South Hill that can benefit from the outdoor seating. And so as we convey this moving forward, there was just a little line that talked about other establishments outside of the downtown corridor, and I just wanted to convey that because merchants have been reaching out to us in anticipation for this, and it's exciting, I think, moving forward.
Any further discussion or comment? Alderman Wolski.
Brief comment, President Janser, thank you. Excited that this is moving forward, that we're going to be able to sit on a sidewalk and have a beer or have a cup of coffee in an area where it's kind of designated specifically for that purpose. We're rolling out a new program here, and I assume we're going to encounter some things where we discover we could maybe do it better. My assumption is I very rarely ever get anything perfect out of the gate, so I'm going to assume that's not the case here. So if there are improvements that can be made as we go through this a few times, please bring those to us. Mr. Lang, everybody else is working on these things. If we need to adjust a little bit along the way, whatever. I think this is behavior we want to encourage, and we want to get it right too.
Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Wolski,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
Motion carried. That takes us to item number 12, which is a property tax abatement request for 2017 by Michael Shealy, I believe it is. Is there a motion?
So moved with staff recommendations.
Okay,
Second.
seconded by Straight. City Assessor Turnus.
President Janser, thank you. This came to us from Mr. Shealy. He filed the document, which gets a number of things in motion. And I don't think I see him here, so I assume he's not going to appear then, but we're recommending denial. There was absolutely no supporting documentation. We've sent everything to you regarding his application, our letter. In fact, we weren't even allowed access to look at the house, which state statute requires us to do. So we'd recommend denial.
Okay. City Assessor, it looked to me like he had indicated that he thought that the house was valued at what it was when he bought it in 07 or 8 or something. Is that?
Correct. He would like it to be assessed at what he would like it to be assessed at with his reasoning. And then he also indicated that he felt his taxes went up too much in 1 year, and he's kind of backwalking the value to get to about what he thinks it should go up. And we just don't operate that way. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Mr. Mayor.
I have a question for Mr. Turnus. I was just curious. I have no quarrel or comment on this particular item, but I was curious how this item comes to us now when we have the Board of Equalization meeting in a week or so. I mean, I'm not criticizing. I'm merely curious.
Right. Well, President Janser, how this works is he's appealing last year's assessment.
Oh, I see.
We will now be deciding on the 18s here in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Understood. Okay. Any further questions? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Sitma,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Barney,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Quadrigula.
Yes.
Motion carried. That brings us to item 13, which is the recommendation to move to the Wells Fargo Direct Purchase Program. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Olson.
Second.
Seconded by Wolski. Discussion. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I have a number of questions on this one. When I was looking at the value proposition to the city of Minot, I saw that all the costs are based on $7 million in volume. And I'm curious, those are cards, right? It's not the processing fees that we take in, right?
President Janser, Mr. Mayor, this program is not just purchasing cards for staff. It is also converting some of the payables that we currently pay by check to either a virtual card system or an ACH system. So the amount when they're going through that value proposition includes a lot of those payments. How the Wells Fargo came up with that number was they looked at their database of vendors nationwide that are currently accepting this type of payment process and looked at our vendor list to see how many of those would be ones that most likely would convert to this type of payment, and that's how they came up with that estimate.
Okay.
Mayor?
I've got a number of them if I can just continue.
Yeah, please
on.
continue.
I'm curious that the expenses, I'll be frank about this. I've had concerns based on Wells Fargo being in the press for the last year or so with inflated fees, not disclosing all the fees, changing the fees, and basically not being a good citizen to their customers. There's been a number of instances where that has been the case, and frankly, I have concerns when we have so many fees here that we're going to have to monitor all those fees in order to realize the benefit that they've come up with based on their analysis. I don't know if there's a question in there for you or not, but I do have serious concerns about that. And I'm curious, is this service provided by other banks, local banks, for example?
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, we did poll all of the local banks to see if they offered this type of program. We currently have our municipal, our cards, our purchasing cards that we have issued to department heads issued through a local bank, and they earn rewards points that can be cashed in for travel or various other things. We pay an annual fee for those. Most of the local banks had something that was very similar to that, but none of them offered the cash rebate that is a part of this program. In addition, the project we're looking at here with Wells Fargo is that additional accounts payable control that allows us to move some of the current check payments that we have to an automated ACH process or a virtual card process, which allows us to participate in some of the interchange rates on those transactions as well. And that's where the additional volume and the rebates come into play. There are some fees that are listed out. There's a whole page of those there, and that is based on their projected volume of the transactions that we would see. Some of the reduced expenses associated with the check disbursements here, I did question them on how they came up with that number. They referenced a study that was done where it cost approximately $8 per check to process a paper payment, issue a check, postage, toner, the whole 9 yards. And in their assumptions, they used a cost of about $4 and then netted that against what the cost of the ACH or the credit card transaction would be and our average volume of transactions to come up with that cost savings.
Mayor.
You referenced the reward system that we currently have. What happens to those rewards?
We, Mr. President and Mr. Mayor, we accumulate those points and we can redeem those for things like travel.
The city does or the employee?
The city does. Yeah, it's for the city purposes. If they go unused at some point, they start to expire. So we can, and we have a significant amount of those points accumulated. It's one of those things where, for example, I am using some of those rewards points for travel to the government finance officers convention. So essentially I got the airline tickets paid for by rewards points. But we've booked those tickets months in advance, and even within just a few days' time, the availability of those tickets changed, as well as the number of points required to redeem those. So it requires, booking those tickets well in advance, and in some cases being flexible with the schedule to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything else.
David, did they give you any references of other municipalities that are using this program? Do we have any knowledge of somebody else who's been on this for a while?
Mr. President, members of the council, and actually Cass County in Fargo has just gone live on this product. And I have talked to one of the gals in the auditor's office there a couple of times in this, and I actually spoke to her earlier today. They are on their second batch, so they are very brand new to this program. So far, things have been moving smoothly for them. One of the reasons why this product kind of came to the forefront, and we've been visiting with Wells Fargo since about August or September on this. One of the main issues was the modifications required to our SunGuard software to accommodate this product. It requires some modification to get the export files out to the Wells Fargo system and also to import the files back to our accounting system. Because we're on the dated software that we are, that requires some modification that will have to be purchased. As luck would have it, Cass County is on the same version of SunGuard as we are, and they have already developed that modification to go to this product, so we're kind of riding on the coattails of Cass County. It will still cost us some money for this modification, but essentially it's already been developed and has been implemented there.
Okay. Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Chairman Janser. Mayor Barney, I appreciate your concern because I had similar concerns. I spoke with Mr. Lakefield in advance. Dave, the one question I didn't ask you that I wanted to is the term of this agreement that we're going to enter into with Wells Fargo. How long is it going to last? Are we going to have the opportunity to review it and then possibly, if we're not happy or if we still have some ongoing concerns, as the mayor had stated, are we going to be able to extract ourselves from this? Or are we locked into a 3-year term or what?
Mr. President, members of the council, we haven't gotten that deep into the agreement terms yet. The purpose of bringing this in front of you all today was to get some direction, if this was something that we were interested in, and also the process that was going to be expected. With conference with the city legal staff, this kind of falls outside the parameters of the bidding process because it's typically a service, but we wanted to make sure that we were all clear on that front of the direction we wanted to pursue. And we would have to negotiate that contract and bring that back to the council for approval.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But the motion says it is recommended that the city, The motion says it is recommended the city council approve implementation of the Wells Fargo Direct Purchase Program. So I think then I would suggest an amendment to the motion, replacing the word with implementation with investigation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Straight. Any discussion of the amendment? Alderman Straight.
I guess, thank you, Chairman Janser. Just to the mayor's concerns, I'd like to know a little more detail before we agree. And so, as Mr. Lakefield, I think, moves forward with it, it makes sense to bring some of that information back to us of additional costs and terms and things like that. I'd like to know that before we sign off on it. So.
Okay. Further discussion? Alderman Wolski.
On the amendment here, I guess question for Mr. Lakefield. Does the language change in the amendment affect the way you're going to proceed on this in any way?
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, no. I think the implementation, my assumption is that we would go through this negotiation process as part of that. And we have to negotiate the contract and have that reviewed by our legal staff and make sure that we're all comfortable with those terms. And it would bring it back for approval.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, we're voting on the amendment. Call a roll.
Barney?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Okay. We're back to the motion as amended. Alderman Wolski, did you have something else?
Yeah, just one question and then maybe a brief comment here. But Mr. Lakefield, in terms of this product and this switch, is this something you guys, as a staff, went looking for? Did Wells Fargo come to us? I'm curious about the genesis of this.
Mr. President, Alderman Wolski, this has been kicked around for since before I came on board. They have looked at other vendors before this. This is, I think, a little bit of a newer product now with accounts payable control. It's kind of ironic that kind of in the midstream the last few months in meeting with them and kind of hashing out if this is even possible with the current system that we have, we received a letter from one of our vendors announcing that they are moving to this type of a payable process, that they would no longer pay by check, that we could choose either a card system or ACH. So I think this is kind of the what things are going to move to. We have some examples of checks that we have processed for, less than $2. So we process an invoice and a check and mail it out to them for, less than $2. It literally, I would say, costs us more to process that check than the check is worth. The last pay run we had, I think, over 30 reimbursements from employees throughout the city. This would allow us to implement that for the employee reimbursements, route their approvals electronically through their supervisors, get it approved, submit it for payment. We would be able to direct deposit the reimbursement checks, as well as tightening our controls on the purchasing side. Right now, we have charge accounts set up all over town. Employees go there and say, you know what, I want to buy some supplies for the landfill, and they pick up the supplies and check off the slip, and at some point down the road, we have to reconcile that and code it so it gets charged to the correct department. We had an incident here in the last couple of months. One of the vendors in town implemented a new policy that they asked for identification, and the person that was wanting to make the charge on the account refused to provide identification. And ultimately, it went through. We haven't come up with any issues, but it's just an example that it could have been a former employee. There's a number of issues that come into play, and the controls aren't as tight as we'd like to see them there. With this type of a program, each of those people that are authorized to be making purchases would have their own card, would be responsible for that card, and would have to reconcile those and get the approvals and process it through.
Just a brief comment, if I might, Mr. President Janser. Thank you for that detailed explanation in person too, Mr. Lakefield. And a lot of that was in the memo too, but going back to, I think, last August or September as we were having discussions about the budget, one of the comments I made was the need to look to update practices and innovate practices in terms of simply doing things better, doing things more efficiently. And so I appreciate you bringing this forward today for consideration. I think Mayor and Alderman Straight have very valid concerns, and the fact that you guys are going through this process slowly and vetting it carefully is appreciated, but I also appreciate the just the general update of practices. I noticed in the value proposition savings of maybe $14,000. I would characterize that as probably 1/4 of an employee. I don't know exactly what it would balance out, but I would guess it's close to that, and that's not insignificant. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Alderman Potter-Gula.
A question, a couple of comments. I guess the question for Dave, first of all, is remind us how much you're expecting this would save us a year.
Mr. President, Alderman Potter-Gula, the cash savings that, or the processing savings that Wells Fargo came up with, an estimate was a little over $13,000. Their estimate on the portion of the interchange fees that would be rebated back to the city was just over $100,000 annually.
So total savings to the taxpayer ultimately would be over $113,000 a year?
That is the estimate, that's correct.
That's music to my ears. The comments I'd like to make, I guess, first of all, I'm pleased, and this sounds like a very innovative, creative idea, so I'm glad the administration is taking this step. Second comment I'd make is that the issue of controls has really concerned me for a long time. And I think if this tightens up our fiscal controls in terms of how money is being spent, I think that's a very, very desirable, very good thing. Third comment I'd make is that in my own business life, I'm running into this thing over and over again. People want to pay by electronic deposits. They don't want to receive checks or write checks. So I think that's part of the system as it's evolving. Point number 4, I really appreciate the background you've given us today. And I guess in the future, if there's a major change like this, I'd like to see some of the rationale, some of what you're describing. I'd like to have a sense of what other cities are doing, what standards of practice there are in your field in municipal finance, how those are evolving. That would help me feel much more comfortable. That gets to the last point, and that being that Wells Fargo has a pretty lousy reputation, I think, and I think all over the country with fees and things like that. And, I very much prefer to buy local. But if nobody locally can give us that kind of savings, I think we're obligated really to go ahead and look into it much more carefully and much further. Maybe there will be some competition locally or from some other vendor, but I'm very uncomfortable with Wells Fargo, like the mayor was saying. And the final comment I guess I'd make would be that I think if Wells Fargo is going to give us a contract, and it's going to be lots of fine print, and I don't mean any disrespect to our attorney, but I think the history has been that we've been snookered with some of these contracts we've entered into. And we've had executive sessions talking about how we bail ourselves out of the messes that we're in. I guess I'd like to ask you to consider, again, given Wells Fargo's record, that we, with our attorney, when she looks at it, or the she's look at it, you know, if it might not be worth getting a second opinion from someone who knows, who's a specialist in banking law, because this outfit really, you know, really concerns me, and I just want to make sure that there's nothing hidden in there. And you know, I think you'll be on top of it. I think even what the mayor has said, that they're not going to start charging us outrageous fees, but I wonder if this might not be one of those specialized things where maybe we, you know, we have our own review, but then we get a second opinion, because it's a lot of money. And I mean, again, no disrespect, ma'am, but they're going to have the brightest and the best paid lawyers in the country coming up with these things. And, you know, I know as a professional, there are things that I think I'm pretty good at, but there's always people better. And, you know, I think there may be some risk here, as with some of the other contracts we've entered into, where maybe we needed more specialized consultation to begin with, rather than, you know, having a mess at the end. So again, no disrespect, ma'am. I think you and I are the only licensed professionals probably on this council, on the dais. And, you know, one of the things you learn as a professional are the limits of your own expertise. And, you know, there are a lot of things I can handle, but I also know there are a lot of things I can't handle. And when we're going to be up against one of the largest corporations in the world, who has a pretty bad record, I would just encourage you to vet it a little bit more carefully. Maybe we don't need, maybe she'll tell us that the contract's is very easy to understand. I've never gotten through reading one of my own credit card contracts, you know. But if you could help us feel more comfortable when it comes to that point of seeing what other cities' experience has been, and what the reputation of Wells Fargo is in this particular area. Maybe it's very good. With home mortgages, it doesn't sound very good at all. So those are the thoughts I had. In general, I like the idea. I like the idea of investigating it further, but I think we need to be a little bit cautious, particularly when we're dealing with such a juggernaut, financial juggernaut.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll on the amended motion.
Olson?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Straight?
Yes.
Wolski?
Yes.
Barney?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes. Item carried. That brings us to item number 14, which is the airport activity report and updates. You all have had a chance to review that. Our airport director is with us. Is there anybody who has any questions for the airport director based on his monthly report? Seeing none, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and with that, we're adjourned.